Thanks for waiting. Our next guests are Robert Koch and Michael Legoff. Robert is an award-winning composer. Michael is a visual artist. They are going to show us their immersive audiovisual live show, Sphere. It was designed especially for planetariums and takes the audience on a trip through space and time, oscillating between dark synth-driven science fiction moments and blissful suspension carried by lush string arrangements. It features custom-made projection visuals and music composed especially for 3D sound. So the world premiere was at Berlin's Size Planetarium. It was completely sold out. You had to make new dates, and we are really keen on to learn how you did that and to learn a bit about your amazing project. So clap your hands for Michael and Robert.
Yeah, so before we begin, let me just say that we didn't present a full PowerPoint presentation, or we didn't prepare it, but we're still going to be able to show you some things. Michael will let you know more about the technical side of things. I'm just going to give you a rough overview. So about a year ago, I had a meeting with a planetarium in Berlin. It was about a show. They asked me if I could play there, and as many artists played in the planetarium before, I was like, yeah, it's an interesting space for sure, but then I soon realized I can't just transfer the show that I have in the club to the planetarium, because the dome requires a specific coding of the visuals, which Michael can talk about in a minute, and also you have the immersive 3D sound system. So I was like, I'm not just going to take my show as it is and put it in the planetarium, but I'm going to make a whole new show, essentially, for that space, really embracing the 3D sound and the immersive visual capacity that it has. So, yeah.
I think maybe we can show the teaser to start.
Yeah,
and
that would
speak
be
a bit more. So can we play the video? We just give it to you?
Like the latest video?
So basically it's a 2-minute condensed version, just basically to show you what it is about. I will explain a bit later how the video is done for the teaser, because it combines the full dome point of view, but also 2D, as you would see through VR glasses, basically. Let's
see
play it.
That was, thank you. That was one of the more bass-heavy pieces. Forgot your name. I'm so sorry. Alex. As Alex pointed out, it's like a whole journey. So there's like quiet moments, which is more orchestral, piano-driven, and then it goes really dark and alien, like the moment we just witnessed. So it's like an immersive trip, and it's hard to just see it in 2D, because when I first saw the show in the soundcheck, this was the first time I saw it in the dome, I really realized how immersive it is, because before, when we worked on it, Michael used to send me little Vimeo visualizations that I used to compose to, or I sent him sound ideas that he created visuals for, but I always looked at small Vimeo videos. So it wasn't until the soundcheck where I was like, holy shit, this is really, you're really in it. So yeah, maybe you can talk about that.
Basically, when we work, so yeah, as Robert said at the beginning, so when we got contacted by the planetarium to make this event, basically, Robert told me, yeah, let's take the music video we did together, let's put them in the dome. I was like, yeah, let's go for it. I didn't realize that, yeah, it was strictly impossible to map basically everything on the sphere. I used to do a lot of video using organic things, like really shooting with macro camera, paint, growing crystals. We did video with bubbles, with ink and milk. So basically a lot of fluid components shot with macro.
Really organic stuff. So I wanted the organic element in the show, but then, as you will probably point out,
and I somehow realized I can't get a 360 camera with macro lenses, and started to put it in a glass and try to put paint around. So I quickly went into, yeah, basically the only possibility was going full 3D. Mainly using open source software. So Blender was the main software behind the project, and also open frameworks and some OpenGL shader coding, so straight on GPU to accelerate yeah, the rendering. And yeah, the whole idea was to kind of bring this organic feeling, this, I mean, the music of Robert is extremely organic, and we were, oh, can we also translate that into image? How can we put it into immersive content? So as you saw here, a lot of the different visuals are for every track, you travel into another world, basically. That always go from macro to micro, basically, so going from space to small particles, small growing event, or yeah, some fire. There are also some bubbles at some point. So yeah, and I think a big thing was like, yeah, to not only, I think Robert can say it, but not only release a record as a usual medium, but to add basically this experience of bringing people together, bringing people in a planetarium and living and actually traveling. I try to work a lot into the immersive content, so really not just mapping something on flat surface, like mapping it flat on the dome, but really working into depth and space and having the real mapping, like immersive experience. But yeah, something that you will leave, like at the Zeiss Planetarium, there are 320 people together in the same room. So it's slightly different from having a VR headset. It's really about experiencing something all together, being able to say to your neighbor, hey, look at here, look at there, what's going on, and not everyone being with his closed eyes.
Yeah, for sure. It's really like an experience, like an expedition, so to speak. You know, you're all in the same room and you're going to space or you're going somewhere else. So we're exploring the whole VR side of things as well. But as you just pointed out, it's there's something about being in the same room together under this dome and experiencing this thing together. It has like this, like when you're in a club, you know, like I used to play in clubs for like the last 10, 15 years, and there is something about the unifying element of the dance floor and like the whole club culture. I've never had this kind of feeling outside of a club or a festival as much as I had it there, because when you go and watch a movie, of course, you're surrounded by people too, but you're more immersed in the movie and it's less about the joint experience. And there I really felt like, yeah, we were in it together, which was an awesome side effect. But let me just quickly tell you, the record that I released is the soundtrack to that AV show that we created. And I didn't plan for it to be that way, but it just organically became that. So when a year ago we started working on the show, I realized I'm going to have to write a whole 45-minute score for that new show that we were going to do. And then it became quite clear quickly that that's going to be my new album, because it's also a really interesting way to, because you know how it is. Artists, they release records all the time, and then it's all about how do you get attention, how do you get people to even like talk or write about your music. And I realized it's good if you can tell an extra story around it. So that wasn't the idea first, but while we were doing this, it was like a no-brainer to me to be like, okay, this is going to be like a whole concept. We're going to do the AV show. The soundtrack to the show is going to be the record. And it's going to be really experiential. It's not just going to be the record is out on Spotify and that's it. You can actually come to the show. And we had 2 sold-out shows for the Red Bull Music Festival. And we are doing actually a 3rd show on Monday. If you guys are around, there's I think like 10 tickets left. It's almost sold out. But yeah, I mean, it's still happening. That's going to be the last show this year for sure.
I think you can also speak a bit about the ambisonic side of sound.
Oh, yeah.
Because, yeah, as we speak about VR or immersive content, yeah, ambisonics or like special sound is also has big importance. Like it's not only about your eyes, but your hearing experience. And yeah, some domes, planetarium do have an ambisonic system. Mm-hmm. So yeah, Robert, maybe.
I had to mix the album twice essentially. So I sat down to mix it like I have mixed and mastered many records before for 2D speakers, as you will need it for Spotify, etc., on vinyl and all that. But then I needed to mix the whole record again for the 360 surround system. And that was a whole new thing for me because I've never done that. So I reached out to this company, Aurelia Soundworks. They're based in LA. And the guy who owns it, John, he's a really cool guy. So we dove into it and he taught me a lot of stuff. So I really learned about 3D sound mixing in that process. And we mixed it in 3rd order ambisonics, which is like the highest format you can mix it in. So you can scale it down to Dolby or whatever, 7.1, 5.1. It wouldn't have been possible to do it the other way around if we would have just mixed it in 5.1. If one day we will perform it in a system with like 100 speakers, I could not upscale it. So we decided to just already mix it in the highest possible format and then downscale it according to the size of the venue that we plan to perform it in. And yeah, so basically it's a quite simple process because you don't just think about left and right. You think about front, center, possibly 72 boxes that we emulated for that. And then you decide where does every sound go, you know, and also according to the visual. So there's one element where in the show there's this shooting planet that approaches like another planet for a collision. And then we kind of followed the sound, so it starts behind you and it follows that object. And you feel a bit more immersed if the sound obviously reacts to the visuals. And that was a new element for me to explore, which was really fun.
Yeah, I think at the moment, so yeah, like the whole show was really like, it has been produced for Dome. So far, the usual file format for Dome is actually what you saw as being a square image with basically half a sphere. And what I put it on the teaser, basically you could see what you would see or what would be mapped to the dome with the circular image. And then the kind of background rectangular one was a kind of unwrapped version as if you would see it with VR goggles. And yeah, the next step somehow would be potentially to re-render the full project with VR. Everything was done in 3D, so it should be always possible to having also potentially stereoscopy as well, so to get even more immersed with VR glasses and really get so the immersive as like surrounding content plus the 3D depth basically with stereoscopic images. The question now is like how much time I could spend to render this thing. Rendering is a big issue. All the show for the planetarium was rendered in 8K. Basically, the Zeiss planetarium got 10 4K beamers. That's making roughly video of 550 gig for 45 minutes. So in terms of bandwidth, yeah, you need pretty decent hardware to be able to play this system. But yeah, like it would be really interesting. Like there is one version on the in VR.
Yeah, outside on the Oculus Rift, you can check out one track which we rendered for VR.
Yep.
Which you can check out. It's just a teaser, so to speak. But speaking of render time, so this is what blew my mind. Like a minute of these visuals rendered for a week or more.
Yeah,
and then like the whole 45-minute show rendered on like I don't know how many computers for like 45 weeks.
We had like run up to something like 40 to 45 computer running at some point. We're really, really thankful to the Berlin Planetarium as they provide us their render farm, so we could use that, and it really, really helped me a lot because creating a 8K 45-minute full dome show by my own was actually quite a lot of work. I didn't really expected it, but once you work with the workflow, when you got ideas and start to get having everything mapped for the show, I went into a more it was a bit less stressful over time, like learning a lot about how to create VR experience. And some of the project, it really depends, like regarding to techniques. When you code into like shaders on graphic cards, I could almost render some part in real time, while some other really heavy Blender project were taking close to an hour per frame, so 30 frames per second, 30 hours a second, and then we can multiply to several minutes. It really, really goes to a lot of time to get every images.
We should probably show that picture from, should we run the trailer, the short trailer for Movement 3? So what we did for social media, we made short like 10-second trailers to announce the show and announce the fact that there's the record and everything. We're just going to show you one of them, if Michael can find it.
Where on the Schreibtisch.
It's on the desktop.
Binder on the Schreibtisch. Oh, okay.
And or you can play this one, either one.
Oh my god.
Here's our presentation skills, guys.
There is Robot Koch.
Yeah, Movement 3 maybe.
Yeah, for example, these are shader, basically it's called reaction diffusion system. So kind of chemical process trying to put two reactives that will react with each other, and that could actually make pretty interesting visuals. Can that go?
Well, the sound was distorting, but you get an idea, and maybe you can open the JPEG where we see people seeing that specific footage in the planetarium, because you have to imagine that's above you and around you, and then you're sitting there. And
so that's the kind of experience when we've got, so that's the Zeiss Planetarium in Berlin. It's actually, I think it's 24 meters of diameters, so it's really, really impressive. You enter in that place and it gets, it doesn't feel like a cathedral, but in a way it's really a room where we are not used to be. I think there were a good quote from the people of the planetarium also, where usually you go 3 times in your life. You go when you're a kid, when you've got kids, and when you've got grandkids, basically. It's usually documentaries and so on, and it's pretty great that the people in Berlin try to open that space to more new events, trying to bring a different demographic, like different younger people, different. Basically, everyone should be able to access such a place. It's a really amazing cinema in a way.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing AV venue, basically. So, you know, how many times did I play in a club where the sound system wasn't amazing, or I had like this small towel size, you know, projection behind me, which didn't look great, and they have state-of-the-art projectors and the 3D sound system. So it's a shame there's not enough shows produced for that. We kind of know why now, how long it takes to produce a show like this. But a lot of people that play in planetariums really just show up and play the same show they would play in a club, because it actually is like a whole thing. Like we worked a year on that show to produce it for that space. So looking into the future, our plan would be to play other planetariums worldwide, but also dome festivals potentially. You know, there's like Mutec and Sonar and electronic festivals like this that have domes. I think Coachella has like the biggest dome so far, but it's also about finding, like many of these other panels today, we're talking about brands and the whole junction between brands and artists. It's an expensive thing. We kind of pulled this off on our own and on our own time, which was already a little crazy. But moving forward, we would have to probably reach out to either a brand, or let's see how we can pull it off, because it's HP is the company that does the dome at Coachella. And they showcase their amazing projectors. So there's, you know, I don't know how much it costs to put it on the show, but I think it's like $500,000 or more just to set up this huge dome. So we can't do this obviously on our own, but we can tap into pre-existing venues like that dome at Coachella possibly, or hopefully, and others. And there's, you know, the Madison Square Garden is building like the biggest dome at the moment in Las Vegas, actually, which will open in 2020. So it looks like the whole immersive venue market is moving and is happening, and we're just happy to have like a full show done for that format. And we don't really know where to go with it yet, because we just kept our heads down and created it. And only now we put the feelers out and are like, okay, what do we actually do with this past the premiere that we had, you know?
I mean, one thing that was also, the World Show was planned for end of January 2019, when Red Bull get to us for the Red Bull Festival, maybe you saw last month. We had to shorten 4 months the project, so...
Michael was like, let's just decline it. Let's not do it.
And yeah, but at the end, no. Yeah, now we're really in the phase of like, okay, let's try to reach more people. Let's try to reach out. Let's try to get people experiencing this show. And yeah, in the future, hopefully we will have a VR version to get even a bigger population, a bigger amount of people that are able to basically enjoy that trip.
For sure. So I kind of want to open it up to the public. Sorry, what are you saying?
You can continue a bit.
We can continue a bit. Yeah, maybe you guys have questions for us, or maybe you don't.
Anybody has a question? We have hands there. How did the marketing campaign for the event look like? So you already said a bit, you needed the help of a brand, otherwise you could not do it. So probably you can tell us a bit more how that works.
Sure. I mean, we could have done it on our own, because originally we planned for it for January 2019. And then Red Bull approached us and they were like, we're doing this Red Bull Music Festival. Would you want to do the world premiere of your show for our festival? But that was 4 months earlier than we planned. That's why Michael was like, please, let's not. But we kind of pulled it together and managed, and it was good because the exposure and the marketing budget that Red Bull added was obviously helpful for us, because there was posters all over the city, and we didn't get money from Red Bull for any of it, but they took us as part of their lineup, and they had a big media budget behind their festival, so obviously we were visible through that. Marketing campaign in terms of the record and the planetarium was mainly done on social media. We just showed you one of these short trailers, so we created like 4 or 5 10-second trailers as teasers that we used on Instagram and Facebook. And then also, because it's an interesting project, we just talked about it. You know, we teamed up with Native Instruments. They shot like a mini documentary about the thing, which will be released next week, actually. where they interviewed me and Michael about it, and gives a bit of a behind the scenes, which is interesting for context. So we just basically tried to make the whole record and AV event a thing that people can get excited about on social media before it happens, but also after the premiere of the show, go into the documentary and explain more about it.
So do you perceive the work with brands as something which is a good thing for both, like a win-win situation for you as an artist too, or?
It has to be. It only works that way, because how many times was I approached by a brand which was not a good fit, you know, and I turned it down, you know, because it needs to be, like Native Instruments is a good example, because I use their software. It's not a thing where I'm like, why do I partner with you guys? You
it's
know,
like a natural thing, because
it's natural.
It's the stuff you use.
They're a music technology brand. I'm using their software, and it's a good fit, because they get to promote their product. I get to promote what we did. So that's a good example for a brand collaboration that makes sense. Others, I mean, I was part of the Red Bull Music Academy in '99, one of the first ones
Great.
to take part. So I have a long connection with these guys. And people need to know Red Bull Music Academy is a separate entity from Red Bull, because there was a lot of media about the owner of Red Bull supporting like right wing in Austria and like some ugly stuff. But I have to always make a clear line. Red Bull Music Academy is a different company, and I can give them a lot of credit for having built like a platform for music and upcoming musicians as well, which I stand behind as an artist. So that's again a good example of a partnership.
Yeah, great. So we have a question. Are you able to play your show in every planetarium, or do you have to adjust it to every venue?
You take this one.
So that's a good question. Yeah, there are different planetarium setup. So far, the video has been done really about, you can imagine half a sphere, which is really cut in half on the horizontal. And roughly the seats are, I've got a slope of like 30 degrees. So you're, slightly lying down, meaning that the horizon point, so where you will put the rest point for your eyes, are around 30 degrees to 40 degrees up. At the same time, there are several videos during the show that are don't really have a focus point. So let's say you've got particles all around you that could be played in any places. Some parts, as you saw maybe in the teaser, where you travel through a corridor. This one might be a bit more difficult. Hopefully, like the best settings will be to really re-render in a fully equirectangular. So having the full sphere basically as needed for VR, and then the show could be slightly tilted basically.
Great, thank you very much, guys. This is a very, very impressive project, I think. Very inspiring. There is another question, but probably, are you in the speakers lounge?
We're going to be in the speakers lounge and going to hang out. So feel free to talk to us.
Guys, thank you very much.
So much.
And great luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You can just leave it like that. Music, goes gaming, goes music, and I do think this is something which has to be at every music conference. The global games market is 120 billion euros only in 2018, and this is such a huge market that so many people underestimate it that we have to talk about it, and it will increase. And there's even more thinking about eSports. I mean, who of you is familiar with eSports? Quite a few. I have to admit, until probably a year, I didn't know what that was. And originally, when I first heard the idea that people are in a stadium watching people play games, was something I had to learn that works. Today, I know this is an amazing, huge market, which has superstars like pop stars everywhere, and it's amazing to see how this evolves. I mean, acts like Zed, like Hardwell, like Metallica play at these events. Universal and the Electronic Sports League announced a partnership and even started a joint label together. It's music and games, and is it a match in heaven? This is what we want to discuss today. What are further ideas how we could do collaborations for that? How can gaming and music and the music industry profit from each other? So we want to discuss this on our panel now. I think my panelists are already here. So I'm very happy to have Kelly Moore, who's going to moderate the panel. She's the co-founder from StoryMob. Kelly, nice to meet you. Come on stage. Thank you very much. We have Leonard Langenscheidt, who's the principal from Bitcraft Esport Ventures. Hi. Leonard, great to meet you. We have Gustav Kell. He's running here. Gustav is the head of esports and gaming at Universal Music Group. Hi. Hi, great to meet you. And we have Evgenia Waldner, marketing and account manager at SK Gaming. So I'm really looking forward to learn a lot about music and games, and I will hand the mic over to Kelly. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. So I'd like to start with just doing a little bit more of an intro so you can understand what we actually do in esports and gaming, and then we'll go into some questions, and then we'll leave at least 5 minutes for audience questions. So I missed it because I was facing the stage. How many of you in the audience know what esports are? Okay. Okay. How many? Do any of you work in esports? No. Okay, awesome. So a little bit more about myself. I am the co-founder of the StoryMob. We are the world's first communications consultancy solely dedicated to esports. So we work with a lot of the top teams, publishers, and brands in the space. And then I'll let you guys take it away.
Great. Hi, I'm Leonard. I am a principal at Bitcraft Esports Ventures. We're the first investment fund that's entirely focused on esports investments. So over the past 3 years, I've been looking at probably 300 different companies' ideas in esports, and music is a topic that recently has become a lot more popular, so excited to be here.
My name is Gustav Schell. I am the head of esports for Universal Music Group, and I'm also the head of Enter Records, a label we announced 2 months ago, a joint venture together with the ESL.
Hello, my name is Evgenia. I represent SK Gaming, one of the oldest and leading esports organizations in Europe. We are based in Germany, and we have professional players and teams in such games as League of Legends, Clash Royale, Smite, FIFA, and we have sponsors such brands as Deutsche Telekom, Sennheiser, Razer, and Mountain Dew.
Okay, so let's start with demographics. I mean, I would say even 3 years ago when people heard esports, they thought about young teenage boys just playing in their mother's basements with no income, maybe a high school degree. But that really isn't the case. So Lenny, can you start with some esports demographics and where we see the crossover with the music community as well?
Sure. So the esports world is relatively small compared to gaming at this point still. Gaming, as we heard already in the introduction to this panel, is about a $100 billion market. Esports is about $1 billion at this point. However, I think it's fair to say that it's sort of the most engaged part of this entire gaming demographic, and that's why it tends to be sort of the trendsetter for all the other things. It tends to be the people who spend the most time engaging with media and engaging with gaming. It tends to be the sort of most, there's a higher percentage of people who have full-time jobs, who are from wealthy families, who are spending money within this hobby. So like, it tends to be sort of a trend-setting demographic, I'd say. One of the facts that I think is pretty interesting to bring up in relation to this music panel is that also esports enthusiasts are about 40% more likely to have paid Spotify or Pandora subscriptions. So I think that's something where it's easy to see that within this esports world, music has always played a very important role and will continue to drive a lot of value and like drive a lot of the fans really into the artist's arms.
Awesome. So, Gustav, in your intro, you mentioned that Universal and ESL announced plans for Enter Records earlier this year, and this week you announced your first artist. Can you tell us a bit about that collaboration, how it started, how you were finding the artists, and the next steps?
So we started working with ESL a year and a half ago. So we did our first sort of partnership with one of their events called ESL 1 in Cologne. It's one of the most important events of the year for ESL, and Universal back then had just recently signed the Fat Rat, who sort of, his thing is that he does electronic music and he sort of samples game sounds in the electronic music, if you will. We set out to put him on stage and have his then latest track called "Fly Away" as an anthem of the tournament, and it was a huge success. Not only for ESL, and the audience loved the opening ceremony that we did, but also really appreciated, and it converted into streaming of music of this track really well. And so we've been working with ESL for a year and a half now, and if you look at the Fat Rat, what it sort of did for him, obviously we're doing more for the Fat Rat, but he went from having 700,000 subscribers on YouTube to 3.2 million at this point in less than a year and a half, and that's absolutely massive. What is also pretty insane is that a huge audience for the Fat Rat and his music is China, and obviously people watch a lot of esports content in China. And if you look into China and social media following for the Fat Rat, he's actually bigger than Tiesto and Calvin Harris combined. That's how big he is in China. So working with ESL has been a tremendous success for the Fat Rat. And now we're signing his upcoming track, The Chosen One. We're gonna release it soon. I'm not gonna, let's just stop it soon. Yeah, we have a ton of music coming in, and we are gonna announce a lot of music going forward.
Well, so follow-up question for that. So ESL is obviously one of the world's leading tournament organizers, but there's lots of different pieces in the esports ecosystem. Why did you choose to do a collaboration with a tournament organizer as opposed to a publisher or a team?
I think ESL has something truly unique in the sense that they are running tournaments in many different games. So if you go to a games publisher, you're sort of like stuck with them, and if that game becomes unpopular, then that's a bad situation you don't want to be in as a record label. So I believe personally, and Universal believes, that ESL has a very potential future, and like I said, they operate tournaments, leagues in all various games. That means for us, we can work with Counter-Strike for certain specific artists, because we see in data and research that Counter-Strike audience tends to listen to a specific type of sound, whilst Dota, another game, they have a different sort of music they want to listen to. So it gives us a variety of options. And I mean, ESL has to be given credit for what they've done for esports, and I want to support that.
Can you go into a little bit more detail? Like, what is the Dota audience listening to versus the Counter-Strike audience?
Why they listen to different music?
Just, does Dota listen to more rock or techno? What are the genres for those specific fans?
Dota, I mean, the Fat Rat again, it's a very good example of his music, like I said, electronic, but in-game samples, and he just released a music pack for the Dota community, so you could purchase a music pack in-game, which alters the sound of your playing experience. And it was incredible success. He sold 25,000 units. Each unit cost 4.4 euros. He sold it in 4 days. So that's a lot of money of selling music in games. The Dota community loves him, and he loves them. And that's what we showcased last weekend at ESL1 Hamburg when he performed on stage in the opening ceremony, and it was a tremendous success.
Awesome. So I'd like to come back to that in-game music experience a little bit later. But Evgenia, from the team perspective, I know that there's a handful of case studies of how teams are collaborating with different streaming services and artists. Can you share a few from the team perspective?
I guess the latest news that struck everyone is that such artists as Drake, Steve Aoki, and Imagine Dragons, they purchased shares of esports organizations, and these worldwide known artists suddenly revealed their interest in esports, and not only as a hobby, but something as they want to be financially committed. That definitely was something exciting. We do not have any shareholders coming from artists and music industry yet. I hope it's going to change in the future. But other examples of collaborations, for example, Deezer streaming service, they are sponsoring Fanatics, and they have dedicated playlist on their landing page and integrated player right on the website. That's also very interesting case. As for us, right now we do not have any 100% music-related partnerships, even though we're really eager to get on board some music industries and keep working with them closely. But we try to implement music and lifestyle activations with our current sponsors. And one of the case studies that we had recently is video interviews with our players regarding their music preferences. And we did it together with our Sennheiser partner for headsets. And what was really interesting is that was one of the most popular content that we released this month, because audience was so eager to learn about that, and they were so eager to learn about music preferences of their heroes, of their favorite video gamers.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm a big believer that esports as a whole is a sport, and in sports we see a lot of entertainment segments, whether it's the halftime show at the Super Bowl. Gustav, can you talk about what the entertainment segment within live esports events looks like for you guys?
So at this point, I mean, everyone should know, even though everyone talks about esports, we should still consider and know that it's a very young industry. It's still growing rapidly, but it's growing and it's not established in the sense as a traditional sports like football is. Hopefully we're going to get there. I believe we're going to get there, but it's going to take time. So we are at the moment with, well, we just announced a record label with ESL, so we're just getting started. But I know that if we somehow manage to create opening ceremonies, an entertainment segment within the esports format that artists, musicians can be a part of, we can help to widen and broaden the audience of esports, and also serve the artists and the musicians in the sense that we can offer them all these people watching this content. So we can get, since the target group of gaming is mostly predominantly young males, we can get them to listen to your music. That's the reason for both sides to be a part of this, and it's very important for me also to have this entertainment segment, because it's important. It widens the audience.
Well, so obviously live events is important, but a lot of esports fans, while they attend a live event, they are actually attending Twitch streams, daily. So Lenny, can you speak to how to integrate music into streaming? And really, you mentioned something on our initial call about finding the right music for the right moment that I really liked.
Yeah, so obviously these live acts are great and all, but when you're really looking at esports, it is relatively the live acts. It's small. Only the live acts themselves only cater sort of a small portion of the whole demographic. In a stadium like ESL1 Cologne, it looks incredible, but there's 15,000 people. But the whole sort of demographic, you're looking at 180 million people who are watching esports, and they're all watching online, and they're all watching streams, and they're super engaged. And I think that's really one of the places where you can trigger so much consumption and where you can promote your music super, super well. I think that's something to keep in mind whenever you're looking at this. When you're looking at Twitch, it's actually amazing. When somebody turns on Twitch during a day, their average time that they will spend on their website watching esports is 95 minutes. So they're consuming so much of the content, which of course should be sort of, there should always be the music in the background, because as you were sort of hinting at, I think it's one of the best ways for a streamer to sort of show part of their character and do it in a very authentic way. You know, you're playing a game, you're of course chatting with your viewers and all of that, but you're always trying to balance your sponsorship slots with sort of wanting to make as much money as possible while still being authentic. And one of the best things you can be doing very authentically is listening to your favorite music and promoting musicians, promoting certain tracks, whatever it is. So I think there's like really a long road that we can go in this live streaming of whatever music is really genuinely their favorite. And I think, to me personally, that feels like an even more amazing part than the experiences in the arena.
Okay, and then Gustav, you mentioned earlier, I think you specifically said with Dota about the in-game music experience. Can you talk about what publishers are doing, what we've seen so far, and any predictions for the future of in-game experiences?
So what it stems from, you know, the possibility to buy a music pack in a game, it stems from the gaming industry has been disrupted, I don't know, 10 or whatever years ago. Someone, or like today, previously you bought games over a desk. So you paid, whatever, 50 euros for a game, and then you went home and you played it. Now, most games are free to play, and they upload new content to the game every day that is available for the players for purchase. And I think for the publishers, looking at this specific, the Fat Rat case, it can also help them if they can invite more artists to sell their music onto their game. They see the value of having the artist pulling in new audience to play their game, because what they want is, you know, players. They want as many people as possible to play their game and then buy in-game items and whatnot. So I think we're going to see a lot more from the publishers going forward, trying to experiment with new sorts of content that are available for purchase in-game, like music, and perhaps there are other things, I don't know.
Okay, so first, or just sort of adding to that, I have to say, I think we're not giving enough credit to sort of the Fat Rat music pack. I just wanted to, like, I know you don't want to pat your own shoulder, but I think it's the coolest thing, because, and this is something that I think the whole music industry can sort of learn something from, which is that normally when you're listening to an album or a whole sort of playlist, you have there's a certain mood that goes through the whole playlist, and it always tends to be that mood regardless of what your mood is. It doesn't adjust to it. The fact is that with this music pack, because the game knows what's going on in the game, it knows if there's intense moment or it knows if there's relaxed moments, and the Fat Rat music pack adjusts to that. So as you're playing it, you're not just listening to a Fat Rat playlist, you are getting tracks that are sort of adjusted, or parts of tracks that are adjusted to what's going on in the game. And I think in terms of like creating sort of futuristic parts of the music industry, this one is something that we have to mention.
Thank you for giving credit to the Fat Rat. No, but he's breaking grounds, and you know, that's what Enter does. We're trying to break and disrupt, you know, the classical major label industry, and you know, support and help and find ways for upcoming artists to grow their audience and you know, help. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Thanks. And then back to Jigna on the team side of things. So teams are raising more and more money at really crazy valuations, in my opinion. And obviously, sponsorship is a huge part of revenue for teams. Just on average, it's about 40%. But other than traditional sponsorships, how can teams monetize partnerships with labels or musicians?
Well, to be honest, if musicians are not ready to get on board as shareholders, which is completely understandable, and brands are not ready to get fully on board with sponsorship, we can always offer campaign-based solutions for the brands that are not willing to dive all the way in and just testing the water to see if esports is the right fit for them and if it's going to actually work for them. But to be honest, when we talk about music, I think the most important thing here is not to concentrate on the monetization options, at least at this point right now, but rather talk about the storytelling and the brand positioning, because our players, they're very, very powerful influencers, and arguably we can say that they're closer to their audience than any other sportsman or any other lifestyle influencers, simply due to the specific of the content that they provide. And for instance, our players, they have streaming obligations. So each week they stream, let's say, 15 hours. And during these 15 hours a week, they have direct communication with their audience. And since they're extremely precious and caring about their audience, and they want to make them happy not only with their performance, but in general with the experience of being there with them, they ask, do you like this track that I'm playing right now? Is it okay? Have you heard this one? And it's such an amazing way for music industries to integrate, to communicate, and to target the audience that is open there, they're ready to listen, and they're ready to consume it. And I think Universal are kind of pioneers in this sense, and other music record labels are a little bit running behind and missing out on this opportunity to actually start targeting audience through esports influencers.
Totally agree with you. So I have one more question for each of you, and then we're going to open it up to the audience if you guys have any questions. So as I think, Gustav, you mentioned earlier, we're really in the early days when it comes to the integration of music and esports. So where would you guys predict the intersection between music and gaming in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think esports, I think you said 100 million, 180 million watch. I think it's 400 million, but regardless, okay, regardless, it's a massive community, right? And it's a community, and it's actually a movement, and all movements are culture, and music is something that penetrates everything. Everyone, listens to music, and so I think and believe that this movement, this culture, deserves its own sound, and that's what we're here to shape and define. So that sort of answers the 1, 3, 5 forever. As long as esports, there's going to be music attached to it, and that's what we're here to serve and support.
For us, as for esports team, I think it's definitely, we want to increase presence of music during the esports events and during the all kind of esports daily activation, so to say, because music basically gonna help us to widen the audience and to make the esports events a little bit less niche, even though they're pretty huge already now, but with music involved, they're gonna get even more attractive to the casual audience who does not have a direct interest in esports. And in general, it's very important to stop considering music industry audience and esports audience as two separate ones, and to be honest, just let them coexist in one ecosystem and to make sure that they benefit from each other, because there are so many ways to collaborate with esports team, with events, with music labels, and in general, it's just the beginning now.
Okay, and sort of to add a third point to this, to me it's sort of, I think, a lot of the big industries, and music is very much part of it, can profit greatly from esports. There's a ton of super engaged people, and there's a ton of things that you can do with them. There's a lot of young companies that are very easy to work with, and I think generally speaking, the music industry will profit so much from this. The main reasons for that being promotion. So I think very much like the way I see it is, it's not like, oh wow, this streamer is making money while listening to my music in the background, but instead he's promoting my music. I think that needs to be a total shift in sort of the attitude towards that. And secondly, also, when you're having platforms like Discord is sort of the main way that gamers communicate with each other while they're playing games. They've already implemented a feature so that if one person in your group listens to music, you can say, I want to be listening to the exact same music at the same time. So you, as you're gaming together, you have the same experience. You can sort of sing along at the same time Obviously, I wouldn't sing along, but you could potentially sing along. It's a great thing because you're experiencing it together, and that, of course, is going to increase so much retention. It's going to create a sort of network effect for a product like Spotify that honestly shouldn't really have a network effect. And I think in these ways, the music industry can just use esports to grow like crazy. So I see no reason why it wouldn't dive a lot deeper into it.
Thank you. Do we have any audience questions? Go ahead. Oh.
Hi, I have a question for Virginia, especially. In Germany, sport teams are normally cooperating with music that's fitting to their image. For example, I know you're working with the FC Cologne. So Cologne mainly uses Cologne-based bands and carnival music because it's fitting to the image. As an esport team, you don't only have the image of the team, but also of your star players. So what images are you focusing on? And if you're focusing on your star players, how are you handling it if they leave? Because I figured in some of those games, the challenge of keeping a team together is quite bigger than in traditional sports.
Thank you for the question. To be honest, esports is a very dynamic industry, and we can't put all our eggs in one basket and say that we're committing to this particular player for forever, because the industry changes, the game changes, the players changes. So it's definitely not about one player, it's rather about the moving and the movement in general, and about the music that fits to particular star players. We are a German-based company, and yeah, we do have FIFA collaboration with FC Köln. Thanks for bringing that up. But in general, we used to have, for example, a Brazilian-based Counter-Strike team for a few years. Now we have League of Legends German-based. So it's always moving. We're getting more and more players on top and on board, and more games on board. And let's not forget that video games and music, they basically share the same key message, that they're help people to communicate across the globe, intercultural communication, and so on and so forth. That's why that music can be definitely adjusted and shouldn't be local. And same as gaming, you can game from all over the world and communicate with the people who share your point of view.
Thank you.
A few questions on Slido. Probably the first question I see, how are royalties created in e-games for music?
I think I can answer that, but so just to clarify what we're doing, we're promoting, marketing music in esports content. The monetization and the collection of royalties comes from Spotify, Apple, and wherever it's streamed. So that's where royalties are created. In the case of the Fat Rat and the Music Pack, it's a direct share of the purchase with Valve.
Yeah, cool.
That's not a royalty. Yeah, you get what I mean.
Cool. With another question, would you say artists such as Zed or Mellow are testimonials for e-games?
I want us to start using the word esports and gaming, but Mellow testimonial, I don't get the question. Obviously, they have a big audience with gamers, so, and I believe, yeah.
They act as role models.
Again, 400 million people watching esports. I mean, you're gonna find many examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hope I answered the question.
Okay, there's another question. Marshmallow and Ninja Fortnite are working closely together. How do they benefit from each other?
Marshmallow has music, Ninja has a huge audience. That's how they work together. It serves both parties, and they help each other grow, because Marshmallow has an audience here, and Ninja has an audience here, and together they are stronger.
Yeah, that's again coming back to brand story and in general raising awareness of each other's in each other's audiences, and it's a very smart move for esports and music representative.
Yeah.
And one thing I can add to that one, Ninja has done something like this in the past, where he was streaming live at Lollapalooza, and his stream ended up getting significantly more views than the Lollapalooza stream.
Wow.
Because of the following. So these music acts can profit greatly from somebody like him streaming. It's crazy, but it's true. This is just the truth of it. This is where the eyeballs are, and this is, because of that, also where the ears are. So
yeah, cool, great. Last question: who's suggesting the artist for games, soundtracks, etc.? The publisher, the label, Syncs?
Artists for games, I'm not sure. I think it's in the case of if you look at Riot, it comes from the from the game developer. They say, okay, we need music for this. Let's call people. So I think it's the game developer who chooses that. But in regards to publishing, we work with all publishers. Labels, we co-work together. Obviously, we're one of the labels within Universal, but we work with all labels. We want to, music travels. I want to help and support upcoming music, and every label has its purpose, and we are currently shaping our purpose. Yeah, and syncs definitely possible. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
Great to learn about esports, and we'll have again a little reconfiguration of the stage, a break about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll continue with our last session today, which will be called the musical brain. So stay tuned. 3 minutes. Musical brain, and we're going to talk about how brain waves can be turned into music. It's a physiological process in the brain to create potential fluctuations that detectors on the head can pick up via an EEG. Then they are algorithmically identified so that the strings of the brain activities, your thoughts, can become different musical notes. So you can play melodies by thinking, which sounds pretty crazy to me, but will be amazing, I think. And it creates a feedback loop. You create music, your brain hears it, and this alters probably the music. So I'm really excited to learn about this from Olivia Haas. She's a data scientist, and Ulf Schönberg, the head of data science from the Unbelievable Machine Company. Guys, great to have you.
Okay. So I will start just to introduce us a little more. So we're from the Unbelievable Machine Company. My name is Olivia Haas. My background is in physics and neuroscience. And Ulf Schöneberg is also a data scientist, and his background is mathematics. Today we're going to show you a little side project of ours. So we don't make money with this, but it's a lot of fun. So I'm going to just show you a couple of slides. So first of all, we are obsessed with brains. I have been for a long time. I did a PhD in neuroscience, which took almost 5 years. So that has been an obsession for a long time. And this is going to be, oh, sorry, you're not seeing the presentation right now. Do we have to put it on the other monitor? Ah, yeah. Okay, so this is us today, not quite as horrible as it looks here. I'm the one with the drill, and Ulf is the guinea pig in this sense. And he's going to try to relax and create music. So yeah, what neuroscientists do often is sit in front of computers and look at brainwaves and try to understand what the person is thinking or doing. And here's a little sketch of what that might look like, just so you get an impression. So, for example, in the back of the brain, you have the visual cortex, so you can tell when you have certain light situations in the room, when it's dark, when it's light, when you have configurations like black and white stripes, for example, or different colors, that can be picked up from the occipital lobe from the back of the brain. So what do we actually see when we record the EEG from just the scalp? So what you can imagine, we're only getting a glimpse. So the comparison is kind of that you're trying to just listen to waves and understand what the sea is doing. You don't really have a clue. Another analogy might be that you're on the outside of a big stadium just at a door, and you try to understand what every single person in the stadium is talking about. It's impossible. So we don't really know from just picking up the brainwaves from the top, so you have electrodes here that will pick up just the superficial information that the brain is giving, but that doesn't give us information what Ulf is actually thinking in detail. So that's kind of sometimes been said in the media, so that's not the case. So we get a glimpse of which areas are active, but we don't get the detailed information what he's thinking. So these are the brainwaves, or the types of waves that we're picking up today, that you can nicely see on the surface of the scalp. So you have alpha and beta waves, which are kind of the most common types of waves. Alpha waves is normally associated when you're calm, when you're relaxed. And beta waves is when you're trying to concentrate on something. So that's what Ulf is trying to do now. Let's see how well that happens on stage. And then theta waves, which are associated with sleep, but also with orientation in the room. And then delta waves. So we're going to pick up all these different types of waves, and the music depends on the amplitude of those waves. So the EEG kind of went through kind of a transformation through time. So quite a while ago, they looked massive. They looked really, really huge. And now you can see it's only this little bit on the back here.
Maybe I can add something to that. I'm not sure if I can talk with these on, but yeah, I try. So that's actually not from the basement of my father. My father used to build EEG machines and used to test them on me when I was like this. So I'm kind of a little bit obsessed with the brainwaves or EEG data. And I made that comparison because when I was little, an EEG machine was like a refrigerator, that big, and you only see the top part of that, but it was really like a big refrigerator. And then it happened that modern technology all changed that to this little tiny thing that is, I can't read, on the back of my head.
So yeah, this is the board, right?
That's the board, right. So yeah, I was lying down with a nasty food after a nasty food operation, and I was forced to lie down for 3 months, and nearly drove me mad. So I thought of something where to put my mind on, and then I had the idea, okay, I have to build an EEG machine. But I figured somebody had already done that, and the guys from OpenBCI, they have done that, and I just ordered the board, added a little bit of that and this to the board, and here we are now. This is the main idea. I mean, this project is over 3 years old, and it changed a lot, but it began like that. It's this classical BCI board that picks up my brainwaves and transfers it via Wi-Fi to the computer. And on the computer, there's some software running. That's a built-in system that the community does, and also the guys from OpenBCI. And then we built an OSC proxy because it can generate OSC data streams that can be picked up by any instrument or computer. And I developed an OSC proxy software that takes in the data, does some transformation to it, and gives it back to Sonic Pi. And that's the whole setup we are here to present.
Okay, so now we're trying to turn that into action and actually show you how this is going to look like.
Hopefully.
So all this is open source, so you can just get it without paying, get it yourself, and play around with it. It's quite fun. And Sonic Pi is also a program that is very easy to use. You have to write a little bit of code, but there's a lot on the internet you can just get.
So here, yeah. It's the actual data stream. Can both share the mic. It's the actual data stream from my head. You have the front electrodes are located here. I hope I can catch them. It's a little bit of lag, is it? So if I touch it here, it will, it's over there. Sorry?
Yeah, we will come to the audio in a minute. We just wanted to show you the EEG first.
The Audio kommt über Klinke, Mini-Klinke. So you can see you can see some artifacts so the muscles in my face, they make very strong signals compared to the EEG signals. The EEG signals are very tiny and come from inside the brains. They are hard to pick up, and they got easily overlaid by all my muscle impulses that I make. So if I make some gnarling things with my teeth, you can see that all the muscle things got immediately picked up. Or if I just blink with the eye, you see that?
Yeah, so the first two, the gray and the violet, are the two frontal electrodes here.
You see that in the head plot? There's this red, it's now reddish with points on it. So this one is first, this one is the second, here's third. Oh yeah. It's not working.
So
it's working, okay. So yeah, the 3 is here in the middle. When I put on it, I make strong electrical signals. And then you have the visual cortex, which is somewhere here, I guess, the 2. And then there is some audible cortex that is here, or at least a part of it. And then you have 2 more electrodes attached to my earlobes to make a conduction, because this is a it measures the amount of energy that flows between my ears and the electrodes. So we are now trying to turn on the proxy. Can you put that down a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So here you see the data flow of, so these are the amplitudes of the different channels. So you have alpha waves, beta waves, etc. And the amplitudes come in here as a data stream. And so if I turn on this now, okay, there's music coming, but it's not.
It's now the music should come through the Mini-Klinke. Wir haben es gestern getestet mit Klinke. Also irgendjemand müsste.
Okay, it definitely works from the computer.
It does not work with HDMI. Oh.
That's fine. We built in a little cat, so maybe you can hear it.
Cat only comes, you can only hear the cat when I get quite focused, so I try now to get focused on the mic, I think.
There it was.
When I just look around, then it should get out of focus. This.
There it was.
When I close my eyes, the visual cortex should get stimulated, so the 5, 6, 7, 8 should go up a little bit. I think I just close my eyes, so. There's a tiny little lag that wasn't there when we programmed that, but this is real life, so.
Yeah, so this sends the information via Wi-Fi to the computer, so there might be a little lag.
It's really hard to focus something when you stand on it.
Oh yeah, you get a little bit more activity on 5. Play around with this. So this is the code basically that generates the music, and here you have the theta, alpha, beta, gamma information coming out, and we use it to change the rate of the music, not the amplitude. Bottom right, you can see the focus. So when you have low beta activity, which is down here, and high alpha activity, so I said earlier that alpha is kind of for being calm, you get the information that he's focused. From being calm to completely. So single events trigger loops. So that was a cat. You're not focused enough, Ulf.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
You guys are too distracting. Yeah, so we basically only used 4 different components, but obviously you can use this and get more complicated and creative if you want to, but then you don't hear anything anymore. I mean, already right now it's quite hard to hear a correlation from when the activity gets high in amplitude or changes, to hear that in the sound. And if you make the music more complicated, that obviously is very hard, but you can control it with your brain, but you cannot necessarily hear the correlation between what you see and what you hear, because the resolution is quite different. So what we use here, we use the amplitudes of the different bands to trigger certain sounds. So when a certain amplitude is high enough, it might trigger a loop of a sound.
And also there's a little lag, about half a second, that is needed by the proxy and the transmission. I mean, it's all on one computer. It takes a little bit of time, so there's half a second lag between everything. When you turn the brainwaves down the stream, so the loop finished.
Oh, wait, I didn't turn it off.
Oh, turn it off, please.
So the loop finished, yeah.
And then that's the lag approximately. And when we turn it back on, the data stream, and it explodes for a while. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. What?
You're moving a lot, that's why. Thanks, guys. So if you have any questions, we're happy to talk to you now. I think we've got 10 minutes left.
Yes.
Come on, I'm going to bring the mic. No, we have one. So
Thanks. So impressive. Thank you very much. You said at the end that you could easily add different sounds, add more sounds, but then it would get messy because it's hard to get this correlation. But would you say that, for example, it's like an instrument? So if I would build me something and I would train every day and try to be able to control the waves in a certain manner to get the sounds that I want, would that be possible?
To a certain degree, I would say. I mean, here it's a bit more difficult because we used the amplitudes from what you saw from the brain waves as a rate. So I guess it would be easier to hear if you would use an amplitude as well. But you basically have to train yourself what you expect to hear. So if you're basically concentrating, you expect stronger beta waves. And if you know that should trigger the rate of the music that I'm listening to, you then should hear the correlation. It's more difficult if you have an audience and that they're not trained to which type of music or what little change corresponds to which brainwave. That's a little bit more difficult. But if you do it yourself, that should be possible, yeah, definitely.
That would be a very non-deterministic instrument. That
Great. Is there anybody else a question? You?
In 5-10 years' time, or when science is continuing, how many different brain sections do you think you could pick up to actually have a very diverse playing instrument, possibly in your with your brain?
I think the main problem at the moment is the technique of picking up the information from the brain, because it's only on top of the scalp. So if you would have an implant under the skin, that would already eliminate a lot. And then it also depends where you place. So we only have 8 electrodes here, but if you would have more, you could have them specifically placed over certain brain areas. So in the back, for example, the occipital lobe, or like on the side, on the temporal lobe, or on the frontal lobe. And then you would see a lot more things like concentration. When you have the frontal lobe activity, you could have those, but that's maybe a handful, 5-6 different areas. You can then go into more detail to pick up certain peaks, a certain width of the waves that you see. But obviously, those little peaks are very small. So, I mean, Ulf is trying to stand very still, but if you, I mean, that's very easily disturbed. So it's kind of difficult. I mean, this is already pre-amplified and filtered, and you can see that getting good information or meaningful information out of this at the moment with the techniques that we have, which is the EEG, that is the limiting factor, not the computer, and the human that doesn't want to have an implant in the brain. So those limiting factors, I think, will stick around for a while, but let's see, maybe we have a few more cyborgs around us, and then it will be easier.
I mean, also this machine, it has only 8 electrodes. When you compare it to a modern setup, they have like 120 28 electrodes. I just choose that one because it was, I mean, that was the thing I could afford.
Okay, great. Another question here?
Yeah, thank you for this showcase. Pretty amazing. Just a quick question on the loop you used now to, which you altered basically with the information of your brain. So you already played around with like taking different stems or different tracks and try to match them with with different brain waves, like to have a more variable switch, make the music you're playing more dynamic, or how are the possibilities there?
I don't know if I understand. If I understood that correctly, but we played around. There are live coding loops in Sonic Pi, and we choose some sounds and some loops that we liked, and then we connected it to some brain waves, which we thought was the right way. It was more of a guts feeling thing, not a very scientific way, I would say.
No, I mean with stems. I mean, yeah. Now you had like a drum set, and you had like a synthesizer sounds. Yeah, if you like could play around with taking, for example, like one synthi, one saxophone, one drum pattern, and then like match them with different brain waves you measure, and then alter like different things with different sounds.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. I mean, you can see here we used a choir, which we used twice, and we changed the rate differently on two different, so this is alpha and this is delta, so we use two different brain waves, but for the same sound. And here we have the cat, so meow, which is triggered by the focus. And then we have a little bit of an electric, longer rhythm that would be started also by different waves. But obviously you can do that, you can use a saxophone or whatever, and you can also trigger them at the same time. So the time is basically encoded by the brainwave coming in. So if you would have a saxophone on and another instrument off, maybe at the same time triggered by the same brainwave, you could be sure that they would come at the same time. So you can also control timing a little bit using that. But here we were very simple, and we only used 3 different types.
So probably I can jump in a little bit and help with a question. The concept of stems is probably something non-music producers are not familiar with. So what a stem is imagine you have a song, and the song consists of 200 different layers, like a keyboard pad, a bass, or whatever. And the idea of a stem is that you put these instruments into little groups. One drum stem, one guitar stem, one vocal stem, one background vocal stem. And if I get your idea right, the idea was if you take one composed piece of music into probably 3 or 4 pieces and then start arranging with the brainwaves. Was that your idea? Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. But yeah, I think that would be possible, right?
We're not musicians, so we just took some funny sounds or some sounds that we liked that kind of work together, but you could be probably quite a lot better than we are if you actually know what you're doing music-wise, yes.
Great. We have another question here.
I have a question. I really don't know exactly how the brain works in detail, but I have a question concerning the input. And like, I'm just, my head is kind of turning right now, and how can you kind of advance that technology? Is it already possible, like, now in the little presentation you said, okay, now I have to focus, now I have to concentrate, now I have to move. That was like the variables that we could see, but is it already possible, like, I don't know, you close your eyes and you imagine a red box, and like there's certain peaks at different points around your brain that tell, okay, now he's thinking of the red box, and are we getting there?
No,
when are we getting there?
Not with EEG.
Okay.
And we have to use like this, again, is a technique that only covers the surface. And what about, I mean, most of the stuff that goes in the brain is inside the skull, so you have to be really invasive or use a gigantic fMRI machine that costs like $1 million.
I mean, basically what we pick up is the information from thousands of neurons at the same time that sum up their activity, and we only get that sum. And imagine from that sum to try to understand a pattern of like single neurons that work together to create the image of a red box. You cannot get that from the surface. That's impossible.
Great. So, guys, thank you very much. I would love probably to close that day with an idea how it started. So we started this morning with meditation. And I was just thinking about what would happen if you would use your EEG for meditation and trigger sounds that help you meditate and probably to find out which kind of music makes which person meditate and to help with meditation. So this could probably an idea how this EEG also could help and work.
People use EEGs as a feedback device for getting into deeper states of trance.
Great. So thank you very much, guys. I just got to get my notes. I have a little information for you. Thank you for being here. It was a great session. Thank you, everybody here, for joining us on the Hybrid Music Lab today. This was an amazing day. We learned so many different things, from business aspects to neuroscience to eSports and everything. But the day's not over. And that's the cool part. The dinner now at the gallery is starting. There will be the music pool community night at the Kuppel stage starting at 6:30. And we will have the management hypothetical hosted together with the Australian network APRA. So what is it about? It's artists and managers face tough decisions and creative decisions every single day. So do you take the opening slot? Is that Zinfi good or not? What should you do? APRA, AMCOS and the Music Pool present the Management Hypothetical Panel to help you answer these questions. It's inspired by Jeffrey Robertson's hypothetical TV series in Australia and will explore the decision-making process of an imagined artist's career. So it's about what-if scenarios, and you can learn about what to do. But this is not the only good news I have. We will see you all again next year for a Most Wanted Music 2019. The bar will be open till 10 p.m. and later. And the best news is, it's free beer for everyone. So go, guys, at 6:30, let's have a drink. Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure. So to me, as a guest moderator today, also let me thank the whole team, from Matthias, from Tim, from everyone who organized this amazing event, the Berlin Music Commission and everything. So thank you very much, guys. A big applause to all the people who made this possible here today.